caught or what the elf might have done after he turned off the camera. I live alone 2 states away from my family. I feel terrible for not being able to visit them this year. I've been having financial struggles as of recent. Paying off student loans is no joke. This is the first time I've been able to live on my own. I'm renting a cabin in the middle of buck nowhere. Wisconsin, all that's around is a convenience store and a bar. The place is nice and the rent is cheap. So who am I to complain? 1 bed, 1 bath, and a cramped kitchen that's right behind the living room. The living room has a nice fireplace too. It keeps the house warm through the night. So now that you've got the picture, I need to share my experience, no matter how few people see it. I didn't have big plans for the holidays. Stay at home, watch some TV, and eat a frozen pizza. If I was lucky, no big fancy dinner. No visitors, just an average night. That's just what happened. I kicked back on the couch with pizza in hand and watched Christmas movies until my eyes grew heavy. I was awakened by a knock at my door at around 11:45. It's dark and snowy out per usual this time of year. I don't get visitors, nor could I see who it was. So I looked out of the small window in the living room. Frost cloaked the glass, making it a challenge to see who was waiting for my answer. I could make out a human-like figure. My gut was telling me to stay the hell away from what was at my door. Before I even got a chance to move, the snow was falling so heavily that it was hard to see anything beyond 6 feet of my house. I trusted my gut, though, and moved to my room. I began to think I was a bad person for leaving whoever was out there in that icy mess. Just as the thought entered my mind, the knocking grew louder. I covered my ears in response to the noise beyond my door. I faced away, and it only got worse. I was right to trust my gut. I shouldn't open the door. I can't let this go on. I exhaled deeply and threw my legs over the bed and reluctantly shuffled over to my door. I twisted the knob and peeked outside. The cold weather nipped at my face as a reply. "Hello," I peered through the crack. "Hi," the person started. I began to make out facial characteristics and realized it was a young woman. My car broke down, and this seemed like a good place to seek shelter. That was a red flag to me. There's a convenience store and a bar within a mile of each other. Why show up to a random house for help? Now I consider myself a nice guy, but the holidays don't make me a giving person. I don't like my sleep being interrupted either. I started. I wasn't sure how to respond. Her behavior was off, to say the least. She was glancing over her shoulder as if she could see anything through the darkness and snow. "I can give you a number for a towing company. There should be an inn at least a few miles from here. The towing company can take you." She didn't seem satisfied. "Are you sure?" she inquired. "It's awfully cold out here, and I don't know how long it will take them to get here." She began to look more paranoid. Her eyes darted from side to side, up and down. It was really freaking me out. "Listen, hun, my house is a wreck, and it's the middle of the night. I'm sorry, I know it's the holidays, but I have a thing about letting strangers into my house." I immediately regretted saying those words. Her fear turned to anger at this point. She became hysterical. She kicked, punched, and beat my door, trying to force herself, in her polite words were now screams. The Jane Doe at my door pounded harder and harder. It seemed like my door was about to break free. What the hell are you supposed to do in this situation? So in the spur of the moment, I just locked the door. The knob rattled violently, then stopped abruptly. I picked up my phone and alerted authorities that there was a manic woman outside of my house. At this point, I figured she had given up and left. I sat down in front of the TV and tried to enjoy the rest of the night. I pondered why she was so upset. No family trauma. None of my theories added up, just as my thinking had concluded. And I began to relax. I heard a faint sound, a sound that was so quiet, but seemed so loud it was the shuffling of snow outside of my window. I pulled my blinds back and peeked outside. The dim light from the street lamp shone onto my white lawn. The woman was making a circle in the snow. I squinted, trying not to reveal my presence. My eyes began to adjust to the darkness outside. It was now 1 a.m. There were symbols I couldn't recognize, and a large pentagram in the center. When she finished her artwork, she looked right at me. She was staring into my soul. Her gaze sent chills down my spine. Her mouth opened at inhuman angles. Just then a scream was released. I fell back into the couch. What the do? I called the cops for a second time writing this. I'll be censoring my address for my own security. Here's how that phone call went. Address I need. Police, please come quick, sir. We already have the sheriff and backup on their way. They should be there within the hour. Lock your doors. I heard a click on the other end. Well, what am I supposed to do now? I'm alone in this house, which seems much more ominous than the night before. There's some psycho lady standing in my yard in the middle of the night. To top it off, the cops that should be arresting this woman are probably out for drinks. I let out an audible sigh and sat on the floor with my back to the sea couch. This was not what I thought of as an ideal Christmas. I figured I might as well freshen up and get ready for bed. Any sliver of hope left in me was gone. I picked myself up off the floor and made my way to the bathroom. I didn't want to risk her seeing me, so I just used the dim flashlight on my phone. I brushed my teeth and rinsed my face. I thought that would make me feel better, more alert. I was wrong. Once I'd finished, I heard a knock at the door, followed by a scream. It was deep, unlike the shrieks previously heard from the girl. Something in me clicked. I mustered the strength to peek outside. There were blue and red lights flashing, signaling help had arrived, but something was wrong. The lights from the car further illuminated my lawn. There were two mangled bodies left inside of what I can only describe as the altar remnants of black uniforms informed me of who they were. Police. Another guttural howl was heard this time, only a few feet away from my window. I did the only thing I could think of, and that was to hide. That brings me to the... Now, I'm in my towel closet. There are two dead bodies in the snow, and something outside of my house, something do not human. I don't know when she, or it, or whatever you want to call it, will get inside, but my gut is saying that she will. I couldn't have picked a worse spot to hide. I feel like the idiot friend in a horror movie that gets plucked off first. Please, if you're reading this, protect yourself. This holiday season, don't let it know you're there. Don't be like me, please save yourself and your family. I just heard something come down the chimney, and it's not Santa, she's inside. Last year, on the day after Christmas, I found a really cool ornament in a clearance box. It had a built-in camera to record a unique perspective on your holiday celebrations. I grabbed the last one from the store dusty shelf and brought it home for less than $10. I forgot about it until my wife and my two daughters and I decorated at the house earlier this month. I told my daughters about the camera and said we'd secretly catch Santa in the ACT. I had an old costume in the attic and intended to deliver some gifts in full view of the camera on Christmas night. My girls were overjoyed and went back and forth trying to find the best place to put the ornament on the tree. They had no idea I repositioned it later, so it could actually catch the living room and a good angle in the nights leading up to Christmas. I turned the camera on to make sure everything was working properly in the morning. I previewed the footage just long enough to confirm the thing was working. Satisfied, I inserted the micro SD card back into the ornament and slipped in a new battery in anticipation for the big night. I did not want to disappoint my girls with a failed recording. We enjoyed Christmas Eve as a family playing board games and eating way more junk food than there was room in our stomachs, like we do every year. We let our daughters open one gift from Mommy and Daddy before going to bed. The girls, still riding their sugar high, could be heard giggling in their bedrooms from all the way up the stairs from time to time. My wife and I could hear one of them shush the other, claiming she'd heard hoofs on the roof or bells jingling. Eventually, our kiddos dozed off. My wife kissed me on the cheek and headed to bed. While I turned off all the lights, I retrieved the costume and tiptoed to the living room, getting ready for my big feature film. Debut, I did everything you would expect Santa to do. I ate most of the cookies, I drank the milk, I patted my large stomach and said, "Ho, ho, ho," my wife was a ho-fow anyway. I then dropped a few presents by the fireplace, all in full view of the camera, a pretty good acting job, if I do say so myself. On Christmas morning, the girls came running into our bedroom to wake us up. They excitedly insisted we watch the video before opening the presents. I transferred the footage to my laptop, forwarded to where Santa showed up, and pressed play. My girls squealed with delight and jumped in front of the screen, frantically waving at Santa while obscuring the video from my view. It brought me so much joy to see how happy the girls were. I was too lazy to stop the video, so it continued to play in the background. While we unwrapped our gifts, I spotted a box I had not seen the night before. It was a small and wrapped in a blue foil paper. I did not recognize my name was on it, but my wife seemed as surprised as I was to see it there, noticing my confusion. My youngest daughter spoke, "Daddy, that's gotta be from Mr. Elf," she said, her voice cheerful and bright. I was ready to dismiss her elf comment as just another weird thing kids say, but my wife wasn't so quick to ignore it. My wife had a very thick accent. Sometimes even I couldn't understand her, the one that came with Santa. She asked my daughter, pointed to the laptop. By then the video had ended, and all that was left on the screen was a preview of the first frame. She answered. Panic struck me like a bird in a jet propeller. I know my wife didn't dress up as an elf. I scanned the video, clicking forward and back, until I saw what my daughter had seen. There was someone in the living room. He walked into the corner after I had turned the lights off. He stood there watching me parading around as Santa. The video went completely quiet after that. It was as though the camera failed to record a single sound. The strange tall man in an elf costume stood perfectly still for over an hour, watching the camera from a distance. After a while, he walked over to the plate of cookies and bit the head off a gingerbread man. I glanced at the plate and saw his teeth mark on the decapitated cookie. The man then quietly approached the Christmas tree. I thought the audio wasn't working, but as he reached the tree, I began hearing his slow and steady breaths. He reached towards the ornament, and the video stopped in a terrified frenzy. I grabbed the blue box he'd left behind. I ripped the bow off of it and dusted the frilly thing away. I frantically removed the wrapping paper, opened the box, and looked inside there. On a bed of bubble wrap was the battery I'd put in the camera the night before my wife took the ornament and opened the back. The battery was missing. I don't know what scares me more, what the camera. I love visiting my grandma. She always makes the food that I like, and in large quantities, and spoils me with the hustle and bustle of college life. It's nice to go back to my childhood and allow myself to be spoiled for a few hours every few weeks. Even though she has 6 grandchildren, she made it clear that I'm her absolute favorite. She'd often have the whole family around for dinner, and after they left, she'd bring out the good stuff she made just for me. We usually have a big Christmas dinner together with the whole family. However, as the years go by, and the younger ones start growing up, fewer and fewer people show up. Last year, everyone already made plans forgetting about poor Grandma. I don't blame them, but they often forget how these visits mean a lot to her, especially ever since Grandpa died. That's why when I talked on the phone with her and she asked me if I had any plans, I lied to her and told her I didn't. She immediately jumped at the opportunity to politely invite me, going so far as to offer me to sleep over at her place. She said there's one room which hasn't been used in years, and I could stay in there. I immediately said yes and agreed to stay over, realizing how happy that would make her. I canceled the plans I made with my friends, telling them something else came up, although they were bummed about it a little. Their drinking party wouldn't stop because of me. That was the last Christmas that I would ever spend with my grandma on Christmas Eve. I arrived to my grandma's place, and she greeted me like she always does, with a tight hug and lots of kisses. I barely even stepped inside when she started offering me food she had already made, what could only be described as an all-you-can-eat buffet. We dug in, and once we were done, she showed me where I could sleep for the night. It was a cozy little bedroom, which apparently used to be my mom's room. When she was little, Grandma told me not to leave my room during Christmas night in order to avoid disrupting Santa in his work. She said that if I really needed to use the bathroom, I could, but to be extremely quiet and not to go downstairs on the nightstand. She left a list of the things I should do before I go to bed to ensure I get a good present. I decided to play along and abide by the rules I told her. I'd read it before bed and do everything necessary, and she seemed content with that. She wished me good night and left the room. I was pretty tired from the trip there and the enormous dinner I've eaten, so I lay down on the bed and involuntarily fell asleep within minutes. I awoke a few hours later. I glanced at my watch and realized it was 3:01 a.m. I got up to grab a glass of water downstairs from the kitchen and groggy walked through the dark, trying to avoid any loud noise or turning on the lights, not to wait. Grandma, I went downstairs and turned on the kitchen light, gulping down a glass of water. I glanced towards the living room at the Christmas tree, and something caught my attention under the glow of the decoration lights. There was a small plate with the tiny paper that said, "For Santa." I reckoned it was cookies and milk, but when I got closer, I realized that the plate was empty. Red liquid was in it, and right next to the plate was a small bucket, obviously. I found this weird, but figured that Grandma may have just forgotten to put it away or something. I turned off the kitchen lights and returned to my room just then, remembering the list my grandma gave me. I grabbed it off my nightstand and started reading. "Dear James, thank you for visiting me for Christmas. You made your grandma really happy. Now Christmas is a little different in this house than what you're probably used to, so it's very important that you follow these rules on the list. 1, make sure to close your windows and ensure they are closed properly. These old windows don't work properly sometimes, so if you feel like cold air is coming in, let me know. 2, don't put any wood in the fireplace after 9 p.m. Santa will be really angry if it's scalding in the chimney, or if there's still smoke. 3, you didn't forget about milk and cookies, did you?" I stopped reading and chuckled at the list. Grandma clearly wanted me to follow the basic rules for Santa, like when I was a kid. But again, I decided to oblige. I continued reading the list in this household. We don't use milk and cookies, we use raw meat and blood. I already left a bucket by the Christmas tree, and there's a raw piece of chicken I put on the plate. Santa sure loves his diet, for if you're woken up by the sound of scratching or knocking on your window, ignore it. Your room is on the 2nd floor. There is no way to reach up to it. In fact, it's best not to look there. But if you see someone beckoning you, pretend they're not there. They may try to open the window from the outside. This is why it's so important to keep the windows closed. 5, you may hear growling. Coming from the kitchen, it's okay because Santa never comes upstairs. And since I already left the chicken for him, that should satisfy him. By this point, I was sure Grandma was just messing with me. That was until I heard the sound of 3 gentle knocks on the window behind me. I froze in place, staring at the list, but practically staring through it. 3 more gentle knocks ensued, but I did my best not to give away that I heard them. Once again, there were 3 more knocks, and then the sound of scratching started first, gently and then louder, as if a rat was trying to bite through the wall. It lasted for around a minute, until it completely stopped. Only when it did I gather enough courage to slightly shift my position. That was a mistake, though, because when I looked down to the floor at the light which was cast in from the window, I saw the unmistaken able shadow in the form of a humanoid silhouette stretched across. I couldn't tell for sure, but it looked like whoever was there held both his hands on the window and stared directly towards me. I decided that the best thing to do is continue reading the list to try and distract myself. 6, if someone walks into your room while you're sleeping and you happen to wake up, pretend that you're still asleep in the worst-case scenario. The person will sit on the edge of your bed and observe you. So do your best not to let them know you're awake. If you feel their breath on your neck and it gets progressively closer, it means they realized you're awake. 7, you may hear me calling you from downstairs. Don't listen to it. I will under no circumstances go downstairs during the night. 8, last and most important rule. If you get up to go to the bathroom, never ever turn on any lights in the house. He has trouble noticing you in the dark, but if you turn on the lights, he will be able to follow you wherever you go, and then not even locking your door will help. 9, follow these simple rules, and in the morning, we can open your Christmas presents. Love, Grandma. The scratching and knocking had already stopped by the time I was done reading, and the shadow from the window was gone. I got into bed and covered myself over my head, shivering, and not from the cold sometime. During the night, I heard my door open, but did my best to ignore the footsteps and low growling noise. I either passed out or fell asleep sometime later, but all I know is I woke up to the sound coming downstairs from the kitchen. I shot up, looking around the room and at the window, rubbing my temples and thinking about the nightmare I had. I left my room and immediately heard my grandma's voice calling me from downstairs. To come open the presents, I told her I'm coming, when I suddenly felt a grip on my wrist. I turned around and saw my grandma there staring at me wide-eyed. She leaned in and whispered in my ear with a trembling voice, "You turned on the lights, didn't you?"